Bookmark continues now with Annabelle Gurwitch. Along with Jeff Kahn, they've written a book called You Say Tomato, I Say Shut Up. Annabelle Gurwitch is back with us on the Bookmark program. We spoke several months ago about the last book you wrote. Thanks so much for coming in to be with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. First of all, it's great to be in Miami because I grew up in Miami. So yes, I did. So it's just always a special thing to come home and get a chance to read and be here, back in my hometown.
I hope you never get tired of this, but I discovered you through Dinner and a Movie.
I don't. I've had such loyal fans from that show. And, I had a great time doing that show. And the funny thing is my co-host on that show, Paul, we argued so much on the show, people thought we were married.
Yeah.
Of course, we weren't, but we were like a married couple. We did over 200 shows together. We spent a lot of time together, and the fans from that show have been so loyal. You just never know, And everywhere we go on my book tours, people always say Dinner and a Movie.
All right, and I want to touch on something I asked you about when we were setting up, was your appearance on Boston Legal a couple of years ago, where you played an attorney who was defending, I guess, some sort of a
It was
company.
a Twinkie defense,
yeah.
right? He was saying that the client was very heavy, and he was saying that he had gotten fat from eating those, and I said it was his fault because he was a fatty, and it was so much fun because it was a cruel part. It's really fun to play a bad guy. And I got to be the nemesis of Candice Bergen. Now, my very first job in Los Angeles had been as her secretary on Murphy Brown.
Oh, get out.
And she had fired me from that. So now to go head to head with her as an attorney where she called me a skinny bitch. Well, first of all, getting to be called skinny on TV, a triumph for any gal, right? And then to be a bitch, it was so much fun, and I was so evil that it was just like, it was one of my favorite roles ever.
All right, tell me about Jeff.
Okay, so Jeff Kahn, my husband, was a writer on the Ben Stiller Show, which he won an Emmy Award for, and he's written on a lot of comedy shows. And our book, You Say Tomato, I Say Shut Up, was not something that was planned at all. The way it happened, do you ever plan to write a book with your spouse? I don't think so, and I don't recommend it. So what happened was a couple of years ago, we had been married about like 9, maybe 10 years, and we do a literary salon in Los Angeles called Sit and Spin, where writers come and read their work. Jeff gets up, unbeknownst to me, we're on the same bill, and reads an essay that he has written as a surprise to me about how hard it is to get into my pants after so many years of marriage, right? I'm sitting backstage. The audience is laughing, laughing, laughing. I come out and I read a story about taking my son to Disneyland, right? Totally taken off guard. And I say, my husband is a great fiction writer. And I realized, at that moment, though, at that very night, I realized, I have my own version of this story. There's really a he said, she said here. And I came up with this premise that two people can be in the same place at the same time and in the same marriage, but be having completely different experiences. And so that is how we started this whole, we were challenging each other. Well, what do you think about the way our wedding was, the way we met? He thinks we met cute. I think it was like a nightmare roller coaster ride. So
were you set up?
We were not set up. We actually met at a party, and the night that we met, Jeff fell in love with me. It was love at first sight, and he said he was going to marry me, which was a little inconvenient because I was already married to someone else. So it was a little bit of a clash of like, why do you think that? And then he went on this 5-year quest, which he considers our romantic courtship, and I consider something akin to stalking. So we have totally different views of how all these things have played out. And so each chapter in the book examines, I think, what is really universals in a relationship, how you see things different than your partner. Even though you're in the same place, no one has the same experience that you're having. And so for me, the interest was, in some sense, because I'm sort of I don't want to say intellectual, but I'm interested in ideas, and Jeff is just funny. So he's just a funny guy. I mean, he was writing it, and his stuff is so funny. And in my chapters, I like to talk about trends in marriage and relationships. But through the book, and there's 13 chapters, one for every year we were married when the book came out. Now it's been 14 years. We look at everything from the way we met to expectations about love and marriage and moving in together and having a child together and what our ideas for the future are. So we really look at all those things that everybody goes through.
Artistic differences? Do you guys have artistic differences?
It's so funny because our chapters, when you read it, you'll see, there's a real reason why there's a he said, she said, and we didn't write it in one voice. You know what I mean? Sometimes you have book collaborators and they work together and they contrive. So like Alvin Toffler and his wife Heidi, they wrote together. Jeff and I couldn't be in the same room. We have totally different styles. So I was in my office upstairs. He'd be in his office. We'd be writing these emails to each other. Why are you saying this? Why are you saying that? It got a little contentious, but we have very different styles of writing. And so there was that, hence a he said, she said. You'll see, people will see when they read it. He's very, I can't even explain it, but we see things differently.
I want to get this in the interview because you said before we started there's a book you want me to read, The Brooklyn something.
Oh, I was saying that Ben Greenman's book has come out. It's called Please Step Back. He's a great writer.
You both performed in Boston last night?
Yes.
And it was a benefit for the JCC?
We've been doing the Jewish Book Council tour. We've developed a live show based on the book, and we have a producer now, and we're going around the country. And it's funny because when we started this, I called my friend Ann Muir, and I said, Ann's in my Fired book and my Fired documentary, right? And Ann and Jerry, I actually met through my husband because he was working with Ben. And in fact, he's very close with Ann and Jerry, and I became close with Ann.
They're wonderful people.
And they're fantastic. And I said, Ann, Jeff and I have decided to start performing together, writing a book. And she said, God, what a terrible idea. Why are you doing that, Annabelle? You've got to be kidding me. What a mistake. And
they did it for years.
They
What's
did
she
it.
talking about?
It is hard. As we were finishing this book, I read a quotation by Rosalind Carter. Remember, at one point, she and Jimmy Carter, the former president, wrote a book together. Yeah. And recently, in the New York Times, she was quoted as saying, never write a book with your spouse. That's rule number 1 in a marriage. And I was like, Jeff, why didn't we read that? It's really hard. But the funny thing is, Mark, I've learned things from this whole process. I learned things about our marriage. Writing is instructive. It's as you write, you learn more about yourself and the subject you're writing about. And I really had to think about, why are we staying married? Time magazine, the cover this week said, marriage, does it really matter anymore? And it's confounding. Why do we still do it? And I think it's a choice. And that's sort of the conclusion that I come to in the book, is that it's a choice that you make every day. It's not always the right choice. It's not an easy choice, but it is a choice because it's really hard to go through really difficult things. And that is what ultimately tests your marriage, because, nobody gets out of a marriage or a long-term relationship without really big struggles, whether it's, look at right now with the economic situation in this country, people can't afford to get divorced, which is why they need our book. Yeah. Because they need to know that someone else is sucking at marriage also. We call our book a self-hurt, and there's self-help books. Ours is a self-hurt book. See, if you do the opposite of everything we do, you'll be very happy. Now, it's really tough. I think a lot of people are really struggling with that idea, and we are too. We're doing it, but we struggle with it. It's not an easy choice.
Who's the more dominant of the two? And he's outside, but who's the more dominant of the two?
Well, I think there would be hands down that would be me. I think we're really different, and that's a funny thing because, I think people think that when you're looking for a spouse, take my glasses off, when you're looking for a partner, that the best thing to do is to find someone who's like you, who shares things that you like.
Shares your values.
I disagree. I think both of us can agree on this. That would be really boring. Yeah. I think that it's actually finding someone who's really different than you, who you can be challenged by. And that would definitely be us. We're really different. Jeff is a detail person. Jeff is, and I love this, I'm a big picture person. I'm always thinking of projects. I'm a do-gooder. I want to go, and this summer my son and I went to New Orleans to work on rebuilding houses that were still in a bad shape from Katrina. Jeff is great at making a cup of coffee in the morning. And that is a tremendous value. He's a detail person, and if we were both big picture people, our house would be a wreck. No, it would be amazing if we actually got dressed bills every day. No, I do that. It breaks down in funny ways. Okay. If you go through it like piece by piece. But Jeff does things for us and our family that I couldn't do. He knows how to be happy on a daily basis. I know how to make big things happen. We're really different, and I have to say, I've gained. He's such a good person. I'm not as good a person as him, I don't think. I learned from him, and I annoy him. I would say I learned from him and I annoy him. I don't know why he puts up with me. I really don't.
You say tomato, I say shut up. A love story. Annabelle Gurwitch with Jeff Kahn, her husband, our guest today on the Bookmark program. Thank you so much, Annabelle. It's a pleasure to see you again.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.